today we're obviously talking about pay compression and how to identify and potentially fix some of those issues. So I know there are about a million and one ways that pay compression happens, right? And it's a topic that is ever changing, ever growing, and ever more prevalent in organizations, whether that be from hot labor markets or small merit increases or promotions that happen or um, acquisitions that happen, and then kind of everything gets squeezed, right? What we want to talk about today is how to identify using market data where our folks should be at when they're coming into these positions. And then from there, how do we use some of our more kind of management style toolkits to help us make adjustments to things like our salary structures, to our pay grades, and how do we run some reporting back out of that as well? So where we start our conversation is where we start every one of our conversations for these product spotlights, and it's in the CompAnalyst ecosystem. And there's two kind of product areas that we're going to be focusing on today. One of which is what we call CompAnalyst Market Data Max. That is our newest data model here at Salary.com, and it takes the traditional CompAnalyst market data that we're used to seeing and adds a layer of market intelligence to that. And that data is coming from what we call Salary IQ, our job posting data. We're going to talk a little bit about how skills affect pay, how we can use skills and hot skills to drive some decisions we're making with our current and new populations that we're looking to add. And then from there, we'll transition on over to CompAnalyst Enterprise and talk about how our toolkit can help you build and develop your salary structures, model changes, and report back against that information. So, to start us off, talking about data, just kind of understanding from that outside perspective what's going on in the market, I'm going to jump us up into CompAnalyst market data. This max model is kind of an enhancement from traditional market data. If you're interested in learning more about that model, please reach out to your customer success manager. We're happy to spend some time show you what that looks like. I'll flash a couple screens here around how that's helpful. So I'm just going to go in, I'm going to look at a very basic position. I'm going to look at an accountant too. For those that are familiar with CompAnalyst market data, we're going to get to that results page. We could apply geos, industries, organizational sizes to the data set that we're looking at. But what I want to talk about is a couple new features that are added through this kind of max model. And you'll notice that two new tabs open up here around skills and competitors. We'd like to talk about skills-based pay and how skills affect what you should be paying employees and what skills are in high demand or hot skills. What are their prevalence coming from things like job postings? And how does that have an effect of change on salary? So what we've done is we've infused some of this market intelligence information right into CompAnalyst market data. We're surfacing what we believe are either hot skills or high demand skills. We're letting you know the prevalence of these skills within job postings. So what I'm looking at here is across the US, all accountant twos. What percentage of those have these particular skill sets associated to them? What's the quarterly change? So how are these changing over time? We're seeing auditing. More and more job descriptions are containing auditing. But then from there, the last column is the salary adjustment. How does having this skill in the job description affect it based back across the broader population? So if we think about something like this internal control skill, it's a functional skill. We're seeing it in 12% of job postings, but we're seeing it has almost an 8% difference on salary. So what that's telling us is, hey, when a job contains internal controls as a skill, that salary is typically 8% higher than the broader pool itself. And we've pulled this level of information over into this platform to help us in that skills-based pay conversation, help us identify internal employees who may need to be brought up because they contain these skills, or understand where to put new folks as they're coming in based on these skill sets. And what we can do is we can preview the impact of these skills back against the market data, and it's going to show us the impact to the salary that happens here. This is also only one way to look at it. When we talk about that real-time market intelligence, it's updated every day. And maybe holistically, we want to understand that back against a standard benchmark. We also have this competitors tab here, where if we're looking at our AI insight in our competitive pay, this is the data coming directly out of Salary IQ, helping us understand trend for positions. If we're looking at the data from CompAnalyst market data, that HR reported model, we're seeing around 78,300 at our 50th percentile, where we're seeing almost $82,000 coming from that posting data, giving us that forward facing view, understanding that, hey, the market's moving upwards. Maybe I have to do something internally across my salary ranges or across the population that sits within that role to avoid some potential compression. The other thing to note too is that a lot of organizations have stopped being afraid to bring in a new hire at the top of an existing salary grade because they need to keep up with the market to attract that top talent. And what you'll need to do from there to address compression is either look at market adjustments for those additional employees, look at adjusting the salary grade so there's more movement within that particular position or group of jobs, or look at something like slow merit increases over time, right? And all of this has a spend associated with it. And I'll talk about spend at the very end. But what I wanted to kind of shift from here is not only can we look at this from a data perspective, understand where the market's going, get this insight to help us kind of stay ahead of the curve. Well, what happens with my actual population? Within our enterprise toolkit, if folks aren't familiar, we will be loading in your jobs, your employees, your pay markets, any surveys outside of us that you utilize, as well as things like your salary structures. And if you're loading your salary structures into the platform in conjunction with all of this other information, you can really easily use our tool set to help you understand, well, where do my jobs and the underlying market data associated to those jobs fall in comparison to my current graded model? As I'm looking at in this example, this works for job ranges as well. But as we start to understand this, I can jump into a particular grade and understand, hey, which jobs are kind of falling out of line? Which jobs what may we see like, hey, I have to already hire candidates at the top of this range, creating that internal compression. Well, that's one way to look at this. But not only that, we can look at this from the perspective of the individuals that sit within that job. Who are the folks that actually have these roles? Am I seeing a tight spread at the top of my range already for folks in these positions? And is there something I need to do about that? Is this a promotion conversation? Is this a regrading conversation? How do I want to look at this from an internal population perspective compared back to that salary data to the ranges I'm using in place right now? And again, this is kind of tip of the iceberg, right? I have 10 or so minutes to talk about these things. We have additional features within the enterprise toolkit to help with these conversations. One of which being reporting and analytics. So not only do we have these structure pages and cost analysis here, we have a detailed reporting and analytics tab that I call endless reporting. Because what it gives you the ability to do is not only use around 70 pre-canned reports from us, but any fielding that you bring into the enterprise system can be reported back against. So if you have costing exercises you're trying to do, if you're trying to identify different factors that go into your compression issues, utilizing our reporting and analytics tool can be helpful there. And then if we need to take this all the way down to say like a multivariable regression analysis to kind of identify compression, that's where our pay equity system comes into play. So there's a lot we can do and help with in terms of how we can address pay compression, how we can see it coming based on the way that roles are moving in the market for those particular positions, but also how can we help you analyze that internal population? What can we do from the jump to say, hey, based on what I have here right now, where are my issues and how can I fix them from there?